Hey there, today we are loading Linux onto a little USB drive. Let's see how that works. Hi, this is Tom's Tech Show, and today I've got a little USB drive and I'm going to put Linux on it and kind of show you the method that I use. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Typically I'm going to be using like a Windows box to get Linux on it. So the tool that I use most often is PenDriveLinux because that makes it pretty quick and easy. There's only one little flaw in their system, but we'll work around that. Okay. So if we load the installer here, the PenDriveLinux installer, you've got to click I agree, and then select your distribution. It's just almost this easy, right? I need to put my USB drive in here first. Ugh. Okay, so I select my distribution. I'm a Debian person. I've used Debian for forever, so I typically use Debian. So I'll click Debian Live, and you can click this download link, and then you click yes, and it will open up the download page, which is here. Now the only thing that I don't like, this is where the flaw comes in for me. The only thing that I don't like is up here you see all this stuff says i386. So this is all the 32-bit versions of Debian, and that's not typically what I install. I'm typically using the 64-bit. So we either have to do one of two things. I go up a directory here and go up another directory and then go to AMD 64 and drill down, go to ISO hybrid, and then come down here and I install the mate terminal because I don't need anything fancy. I don't need anything, glossy. I don't need anything extra. I just want the operating system to be there so I can load a program and run it. So, and mate is like the most standard, simplest kind of interface that they have. Now, if you're going to be installing this onto a newer laptop, something that you want to be able to use Wi-Fi, different drivers, then you want to look for this right here, which is the non-free firmware version. So you go down to this link here, and we'll open that in a new tab, and here we go. We have the non-free firmware here. So here's a link for 10.2.0 live non-free. So I go down here, again, pick AMD 64, ISO hybrid, and come down here, and I would pick the AMD Debian Live 10.2 AMD 64 mate terminal non-free. Now this has the extra drivers that are needed to do like the different like Intel and some of the other Wi-Fi cards that are in laptops. So if you plug it in and install and you can never get the Wi-Fi to work, then you use the non-free version to get there. Okay, so I have downloaded the ISOs that I want already, and since it knows to be Debian Live, here in the selection box, I click Browse, and in my selection box it automatically filters my ISO files. So I can click the 64 Mate edition, and then I'll come down here and I need to refresh. Here, let's start over. I got to refresh that because I plugged in my drive late. So let's go and redo this. Okay, boom, pull this up. Agree. Okay, here we go. Now it should be there, so I'll come down to Debian Live. I have my ISO. I have my drive here. It's like, oh, there's not enough disk space. Well, that's because there's something on it, and I'm just going to format it. Format it, FAT32, yes, wipe entire disk. Just go for it. Click Create. Okay, it's going to do all these things that it says. I just click yes, and boom, it's going to start going and installing Debian onto my USB drive. Once that gets through and you plug it into the laptop, you'll come up with something that let's cancel that. We need to restart that. Hold on. Let's reboot it. Reset. Okay, so you'll come up and there'll be a window and it'll see this little box here. You just say live and it starts running Linux. It's going to take a little bit of time. If you're coming off of a USB drive in your laptop or whatever, you do need to go into the BIOS. That's the other thing that you'll need to do, is to go into your system BIOS, and with the USB drive plugged in, go into the BIOS and change that you want it to be able to boot off of that USB drive. Otherwise, it's going to bypass it. And you may have, sometimes you have to switch back to classic or standard or the old way of doing things because the new UEFI sometimes doesn't work with some of the new Linux distributions and other ones that I found. So I just switch over, go back to the old classic boot method. And in a second or two, we should have a window here that has Debian loading. I'm sure it's going to launch. It is running off of, USB, and that can take a little while. Up, here we come. We got applications up here. We got this. I'm now connected to that. Okay, so then right here, this is actually running off of the computer here. So if I hit enter, click that, and I hit enter, I know that it's going to run because it's. If you try and double click it, it's like it doesn't come up fast enough, and it's like, did I double click it? Did I do it fast enough? So if I select it, hit enter, then I know that it's going to be actually running, because sometimes when you're loading this stuff off of USB, it just takes a while. It's, depending on if you've got USB 2, USB 3, the speed of your USB stick, all those different things make a difference in how long it takes for this stuff to load. Okay, so now here we go. We are at the setup display, so we can do some simple. You can just click next. I'm in Pacific time zone here, Los Angeles. Click next. Pick your keyboard and layout. We want to erase the disk, and click next. I am of course Tom from Tom's Tech Show, and we're going to put in a password. And then boom. Now this comes down and it's going to be telling me, lift this up a little bit. This is all the stuff I'm doing. Clicking install. Now it's actually installing and loading. It's going to create the drive and do all the stuff and install Linux onto your system from your USB drive. This is going to take a while. Like I said, because it's coming off USB, and depending on that speed, that'll be how long it takes and everything else. But that's how I do it. There's a lot of other people out there with a lot of different ways. The biggest thing to me is it needs to be quick and simple. I don't need it to be ultra fancy. That's why the PenDriveLinux thing, which is still loading onto this USB drive, it takes a while to copy everything over. But just a simple, quick utility. Boom, I just need it on there. And typically I have a Windows box around that's there that I can actually use and use that to load everything up and get it all going. So that's how I do it. If you have another way to do it, or that you seem to think is better, if you have a different distribution that requires a different method, then let everybody else know. Make a video of your own and put it up on YouTube, and then we can reference that and build a library of how to install Linux on USB drives. It'd be fun. All right. Well, thanks for watching this one, and see you in the next video. Take care.